We're glad you're here today to join us on this presentation.
Yeah, we're almost at 40 now. So now we're 40. Okay. Well, I think in the interest of time and respecting everybody's schedules, I think that we'll get started. Welcome to our annual policies and guidelines governing appointments, promotions, and the professional activities of the RBHS faculty. Next slide. I'm Pat Fitzgerald-Bocarsley. I'm the provost for RBHS Newark, and I've met many of you, I'm sure. I'm a basic scientist, and I study viral immunity. And in this particular scenario, I'm at an Alzheimer's and Immunity Conference in Boston. Jeff?
And I'm Jeff Carson, and I need a new picture for sure. I'm a distinguished professor of medicine at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School and have been here many, many years. I am a general internist and clinician, spend about 30% of my time doing both inpatient and outpatient medicine, and I do clinical trials on blood transfusion. That's my area of research interest. And we're really pleased to join you this morning and this afternoon, and we look forward to kind of giving you an overview of this of our A&P process, and as well as happy to answer questions at the end.
Great, let's move. Okay, so something that you should be familiar with is our RBHS Faculty Affairs website. It has a lot of really important faculty resources that you're going to need as you're going through your career, including all the different programs that are offered to faculty, and how to get extensions to timetables for tenure and things like that. So make sure that you're aware of this website. And sometimes you have to dig a little. Sometimes it's not the easiest to negotiate, but there's a lot of really valuable information here. So something else that you need to be very familiar with are the A&P guidelines, and there's a link to them here. These are negotiated guidelines that are updated periodically in consultation with the union, and we're trying to keep them as up to date as possible. But there's a lot of different things on the website related to the whole appointment and promotion process, and some of those links are here. And we will be sending out this slide set to everyone who attended, as well as this information is available, of course, online. So the fundamentals are that academic review is required for all reappointments. So at the reappointment stage, there is a formal review of the CV of the individual who is being considered. Reappointments do not involve outside letters, but do involve other aspects of the faculty review. Something else that's really important to emphasize is that there's an expectation of teaching on all tracks, and that can look very different depending upon the kind of individual faculty member that you are. It can involve didactic lectures. It can involve mentoring of students in your laboratory, teaching at the bedside for clinicians, of residents and medical students and other house staff. And but everyone is expected to teach, and in many cases that should involve some didactic lectures as well. Professionalism is something that we emphasize. It's a must for all faculty, and there is a section on annual reviews each year about professionalism, how you treat your colleagues, your students, staff, etc., is very important. So Provost, Jeff and I review all appointment letters for whether there is adequate support and mentoring needed for success of the proposed faculty, all levels of appointments in all of the different tracks. Administrators should normally be on scholarly tracks, but in some instances, but it should be rare, they may be on the professional practice track. The first group of individuals I want to talk about are RBHS lecturers and instructors. These individuals are not assigned a track, and it's a position at lecturer for those who have not yet completed their terminal degree, but are teaching and participating as faculty members. These are 1 to 3 year appointments, and individuals may maintain that rank for up to 9 years. Sometimes we know that when you're working full time and working on a PhD, it can be very, very difficult and take a little bit longer. There is, if you don't succeed in getting that terminal degree, then your terminal appointment in the 10th year, but that seems very unlikely to occur. Once the terminal degree is completed, then the individual can be considered for promotion, their RBHS instructor or assistant professor during the regular annual promotion cycle. Likewise, RBHS instructors are not assigned a track. This position requires an advanced graduate degree or equivalent of whatever is the norm in your field. And it's often for individuals who have completed their training and are eligible for board certification, but have not yet taken medical boards, for example. RBHS instructor positions range from 1 to 3 year terms. By the end of the 3rd year, they must meet the criteria for promotion to assistant professor on one of the 5 faculty tracks or receive a 1-year terminal non-renewable appointment in the 4th year. Excuse me. Selection of track is determined at the time of appointment or promotion to assistant professor, lecturer or instructor. And it's determined by the department chair in consultation with the faculty member, the institute director, if applicable, the dean, and the provost, the campus provost, or in the case of tenure track individuals, both provosts and the senior vice chancellor are involved. It's based on the qualifications of the individual, the career aspirations. Of course, there has to be institutional need and availability of the position and funding. So this is something that if you're thinking about what track you want to move to after finishing being an instructor and a lecturer, then by all means reach out to any of these individuals, your chair, your institute director, or us. We're happy to talk to you. So the length of appointments varies depending on the tenure versus non-tenure tracks. So for non-tenure tracks, assistant professors in all tracks have initial 1 to 3 year appointments and reappointments. For associate professor, professor, or distinguished professor research, the initial and reappointments are 1 to 3 years. Associate professor teaching, clinical, or professional practice track, the initial is 1 to 5 years. And when promoted to or reappointed, 2 to 5 years. And after 10 years, those appointments can be from 3 to 5 years. For professor and distinguished professor on the teaching, clinical, or professional practice track, the initial appointments can range from 1 to 5 years. And upon promotion or reappointment, 3 to 5 years. And after 10 years, they can be up to 7 years, but at least 3 years. This provides stability for those individuals. Something that is possible and certainly is utilized by faculty quite frequently are extension of timetables. So extensions for instructors, remember that they have circumstances, that it requires a request in writing from the faculty member and must be approved by the chair, the dean, and the provost. And we certainly have done this. There have been any of a number of reasons that are extenuating that individuals have needed a little more time as an instructor. Extensions for tenure track faculty are granted in certain circumstances, such as serious health conditions, parental or familiar circumstances, individuals who've taken a leave without pay for some reason, perhaps to go to another institution for a while. Faculty may request for up to 2 years to be excluded, but it's 1 year at a time. The request is in writing from the faculty member and must be approved by the chair, the dean, and the provost. Extensions have been granted in light of the COVID-19 pandemic for tenure track RBHS instructors and RBHS lecturers. And depending on the date of hire, faculty have been eligible for up to 2 years of extension due to COVID. We all know that things have sometimes been very difficult, especially for researchers, but also for clinicians who are building their academic portfolio during the pandemic, which hopefully things are getting back to much more normal at this point. Something that is key is faculty mentoring. At the time you're hired, you are assigned a mentor. Mentoring is a key factor in successful faculty development. There have been many studies that have demonstrated that this is important. Every faculty member up through associate professor is expected to have a mentor to help them with career development. Initially, the mentor may be a chair or supervisor, but within 6 months, the faculty member should identify additional mentor or mentors to help guide their career development. They can still maintain their chair or supervisor as a mentor, but they should have identified other people that can help as well. Mentoring of junior faculty is an important faculty role for those who are at a higher level and is included in the annual review process. So keep in mind that the expectation is that you are going to be involved in mentoring. Even some assistant professors are involved in mentoring more junior people in their departments. Mentees should initiate meetings with their mentors on a regular basis, and that should be at least twice a year. So don't be shy. Don't wait for your mentor to reach out to you. It's your responsibility to initiate this request. As part of meeting with their mentor, mentees annually should fill out an individual faculty development plan and discuss their career development and any other concerns they may have. Some mentors are in the exact field and can provide very detailed information, can look at grant applications, specific aims, and things like that. RBHS, through the development, provides multiple training events throughout the year for mentors and mentees. These events are publicized by emails. I'm sure you get emails all the time from her, and are posted in the RBHS calendar. And there's a link to that calendar that you can take a look at. I find it useful when I'm trying to figure out exactly what is coming up. So these events are both for mentors and mentees, depending. And there's an annual mentoring symposium, which is very helpful as well. So now we're going to get into the tracks, and I'll start with the more research related tracks, and Jeff is going to go through all of the clinical tracks and teaching track and professional practice. So we'll start with there are 5 tracks. So non-tenured tracks are most of them, and then there's a tenure track, and we'll start with tenure track. So tenure track is for people who will spend the majority of their time leading investigation. And the areas of investigation can span any of the disciplines or modalities related to biomedical sciences. For example, it could be clinical research, services research, lab research, and RBHS provide newly appointed faculty on the tenure track with significant protected time so that they can spend the majority of their time conducting this research and writing grants. They will be assigned a mentor who is going to be able to help facilitate their development as tenure track faculty. And in many cases, our schools and institutes have mentoring teams because one mentor may not meet all needs. And importantly, we provide appropriate startup funding for the individual to conduct the research. And the degree of startup funding is something that is negotiated and depends upon the actual needs of the particular research being conducted by the faculty member. So assistant professors have up to 9 years to attain tenure. This is a longer tenure track than the most of Rutgers, which has a 6-year track, but you are not constrained to needing to take 9 years. You may come up as soon as you are available, as long as you've been here for 4 years. If the candidate, however, is not successful by the 9th year, they will be given a 1-year non-renewable terminal contract. So I always encourage people to not necessarily look at that timetable, but rather be normally a tenure track receive 3-year renewable appointments that can be renewed twice. And again, this is a formal review. It goes through the A&P committees. And these are at 3 years after formal review and 6 years after formal review. Some individuals do go up at some point during that period as well, the second period. For associate professor, tenure is customarily granted at the time of promotion to associate professor. So we typically link promotion to associate and tenure, but on occasion, an assistant professor on the tenure track may be promoted to an associate professor without the granting of tenure after a minimum of 4 years as an assistant professor. So this is for people who have achieved a lot already, but may not yet have all the qualifications for becoming a full professor or an associate professor with tenure. If an associate professor is appointed at the non-tenure track, for example, they're transferring from an outside institution or from a non-tenure track associate position, professor position, or professor position from one of the RBHS schools, they will have a total of 5 years from the time of appointment to receive tenure. If tenure is not awarded by this time, the faculty member will be given a 1-year terminal non-renewable appointment. And again, all of these time frames are exclusive of any other additional extensions that individuals may have due to COVID or other reasons that I mentioned earlier. So that could be extended beyond that. So the award of tenure is reserved for faculty members who were recognized as leaders in their scientific community. And this is going to be evidenced by having high impact peer-reviewed publications that are coming out of your independent lab and not just with previous mentors. Sustained and substantial peer-reviewed funding as PI, for example, 2 or renewed R01s or R01 equivalents. And we do have a document on the website that describes what some of those R01 equivalents can be. Often people attaining tenure have officer positions in societies or memberships in honorary societies. They're members of editorial boards. They're members of scientific peer review committees. So when you get those invitations from the NIH or other organizations to peer review, that's an important part of your process as you progress to tenure. National or international invited research presentations, and national or international reputations attested to arm's length letters from external referees. So arm's length letters must not be from individuals with a personal relationship, a training relationship, an institutional or collaborative relationship with the candidate at any point in their career. So the award of tenure involves the evidences also of not just research excellence as attested to by publications and funding, but also teaching excellence. So again, everyone is expected to teach, get yourself involved in teaching, giving of didactic lectures. Where available, then evaluation scores are provided to the promotion committees. For clinicians, and clinical excellence and volume is expected, appropriate to the amount of effort for that clinical activity. Service to the institution as well as to the profession is also a big part of award of tenure. So are you serving on school-based committees, RBHS wide committees, workers committees, and to what extent are you involved with your national service? So encourage individuals to get yourself onto a committee at the national level for your appropriate societies. Often they're looking for volunteers and to really begin to build that portfolio of research. And again, study sections, editorial boards, things like that. Professionalism goes without saying is required for award of tenure as well. So the other track that's involved with research as the primary focus is the research track. And faculty on this track are involved in either basic or applied research. The primary focus is to facilitate and support the overall research mission rather than to develop independent research programs, although there are some exceptions to this, such as in PHRI, where they do have independent laboratories, many of them. Faculty typically on this track will conduct research in collaboration with other investigators, but may have independent laboratories, as I mentioned, or serve as PIs on grants and as senior author on publications. They also provide the experience, expertise, and leadership needed for the efficient running of core laboratories. So many of our core lab directors are research track faculty. And are absolutely vital to other individuals' research. And they're clinical laboratories, and they're supporting funded research. We couldn't function as an institution without our outstanding cores and our faculty. The teaching responsibilities are primarily related to training lab personnel in using whatever lab that you might be associated with or core, and to work on research projects or involving reuse of core facilities. So again, but some people who are on the research track do have their own independent research as well as some of these other aspects. So the criteria for promotion on the research track include investigation and scholarly accomplishments. And this includes authorship of original publications and peer-reviewed journals. Significant intellectual contributions are of course required for these patients. Track faculty is not expected necessarily to have initiated and led the research effort, but there are some exceptions for people who do. They make contributions to extramural peer-reviewed funding. And the evaluation of their unique intellectual contributions by senior authors of their papers and grants can be attested to in writing. So many of these individuals will end up on the papers as a supporting author. And that's very important. The evidence of regional and national recognition is also required. And so there should be some invitations as a speaker or perhaps serving as a visiting professor, membership in positions of leadership or being on committees in professional societies, where applicable, editorial board memberships or editorial review assignments. So important to not say no to all of those. And some individuals have consultative positions with various government and private agencies, including, for example, serving on study sections or grant review panels. And some individuals are involved in organizing regional, national, or international meetings. So teaching, including mentoring in a research laboratory, health profession school, hospital, department, division, or program is certainly required. Some of our research faculty do give lectures in the graduate school, and that's very much valued, and also participating in other university teaching activities. Service is not obligatory, but is considered an infrequent event. I'm not sure how infrequent that is, but they may be considered as a positive factor in promotion. So clearly, individuals that are serving as directors of corps, that service is a very big part of what they do. But in addition, there are service on university committees that is extremely helpful, and our research faculty are very valuable contributors to that. And of course, professionalism and how you interact with everybody that you come in contact with is very important, and again, is part of the annual review process. And I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Again, Jeff Carson here. It's thank you all for joining it. And once again, we will be happy to entertain questions at the end. So Pat has been going through the tenure track and the research track for you, and now I'm going to move more to the clinical tracks. So the first one we call the clinical track, and here we look for evidence of substantial collaborative scholarship, reputation in healthcare or related fields, patient care, and excellence in education administration where applicable. So there are two types of people in the clinical track. The first is what we call the clinical scholar, and this group is engaged in funded research and published the results of collaborative research. And I'm going to define those terms in more depth in a moment. The clinical educator track is a pathway is not required to have research, but are expected to produce a significant body of scholarly publications. And once again, I'll define this in more detail in a minute. Clinical track, of course, implies that these are faculty that are involved with healthcare delivery. So we're looking for excellence in clinical care. Teaching is every member of our faculty is involved with teaching, and excellence there, of course, is critically important to our trainees. Then service and professionalism, and we'll go through those in a little more detail as well. You're going to see we mentioned professionalism many times during this presentation. It's required and expected by all of us. Next slide, please. So let's now turn primarily to the clinical scholar track here. And what are we looking for regarding scholarship? Well, here we're looking for participation in team research or funded research as a significant contributor. Okay, so we're not expecting that clinical scholars be the principal investigators of a funded research program, but they are collaborative. part of the team. We are expecting substantial authorship or significant peer-reviewed publications and recognition outside the institution. So while they may not be the PIs, the principal investigators of these research studies, they will have a major part in it. They will be publishing, they will be presenting this work. And in contrast, and I'm once again comparing it to the tenure track, they must make independent contributions with a clear theme, but need not be the leader or driving force. So they're collaborative. I'm repeating myself, trying to emphasize the aspects and how this differs from a tenure track position. And then what type of research, everything goes. Okay, anything that's biomedical is perfectly fine. Next slide. Okay, this, in terms of requirements, requires nationally recognized scholarship, and this would be peer-reviewed and non-peer-reviewed publications. And in the clinical educator, these are typically reviews, textbook chapters, could be case series, case reports, published practice guidelines, meta-analysis, and other examples of scholarly contributions. There is no research required. It's good if it's there. It's certainly recognized. Now, what's highlighted here is what we have emphasized in our most recent communications with the faculty. And we created a table which has all the criteria that might be considered for the different tracks. And in that was the clinical educator. So we had, this is a new document that is on the Faculty Affairs website. And so what's highlighted here are points that we wanted to emphasize that are, they're not new criteria, but it's to emphasize how they are being used. So we're looking for demonstration excellence of several of the criteria will be factored into promotion. Those categories are not a checklist. Advancement is based on a holistic process, evaluating the totality and level of achievement. So what do we mean by that? Look, you know, there are a lot of activities that all of you are involved with. Okay, we don't expect everyone to be active in every aspect of the different criteria. But we're looking for excellence, and we're looking for an overall excellent performance to warrant promotion. And so it's not a checklist. You don't have to have this a certain number of these categories filled in, if you will, but rather we're looking at the overall performance. And this is we think really important to understand, so that we call it a holistic approach. Next slide, please. Clinical excellence, of course, is always expected, and we're looking for outstanding clinicians in their respective fields. That, you know, if if your clinical discipline involves referrals, then then we're looking for we're looking for faculty's achievements that involve others looking to you as the expert clinician who's able to handle challenging problems or has some unique clinical experience. Now that clearly doesn't relate to many. Okay, so that's where where applicable. If you're in primary care, for example, like I am, you're not going to get those kind of referrals. But if you're a super specialist who does some unique procedure, for example, then that would be an example where you provide a unique service, and that if you can demonstrate that you are getting referrals and that you're viewed as an expert in our community, then that's an example of what we're looking for. Clinical care, once again, that's the last bullet here, is that care that's regarded as outstanding. Now, how do we assess that? The truth is it's not easy to assess, okay, but it's based upon your colleagues. What do your colleagues say? So that would be your senior faculty members. It could be other physicians in our community that work with you, or health professionals. It doesn't have, this is not just about the medical school. We have many people in other clinical disciplines that are not physicians. And so it's other health professionals and their colleagues. And then the assessment of our trainees, right? Because they certainly know who's good and who's not. Okay. And so we're looking for a varied opinion a varied source of opinions to comment on your clinical care, and of course we're looking for outstanding clinical care. Teaching excellence, so we keep mentioning the word excellence, and this of course can take many forms. This could be curriculum and course development, training, teaching, advising students, residents, fellows, colleagues through mentoring, and it can happen in many clinical settings. So yeah, it can be in the classroom, online, or laboratories, or it might be in the hospital, it might be in the outpatient clinics, and it could be in the community. So there are lots of places we all teach, and they're all very important. Next slide, please. Now, scholarly activities. In general, the best way to go at this is to focus on a specific area of interest and create a theme of your work. And this should be nationally accessible. For the clinical scholar, this would involve independent intellectual contributions to a supported research program. And I'm repeating myself, but to emphasize here, it need not be the leader or driving force behind this body of work, but it obviously needs to be high quality, and it has to have markers of accomplishment. So that's publications, presentations at national meetings, and recognition on a national level. The clinical educator is not required to participate in research, although they can. And you can imagine that any one faculty might move between these two kinds of scholarship, and it's about emphasis and largely how you mostly most of your scholarship is. But it's the clinical educator is not required to participate in research, but must produce a significant volume of scholarly publications, peer-reviewed manuscripts, practice guidelines, book chapters, case reports, consensus, innovative teaching materials, curricular teaching methods, approaches, or contributions to research. Now, the most common question I think we get is how many publications, right? And you can imagine we don't have an answer for that, because so much of it depends on the impact of the publications, i.e. where they're published, the significance of the work, and so forth. But we do have on the website a table. It's a big, complicated table, which looks at the numbers of publications by track and by rank in those who have been promoted in the last several years. So that will give you a feel for what others who were successfully promoted, how many publications they had. So that's for you to look at. And because we can't really give a fair assessment of the number. Once again, I'm repeating myself, but quality, impact obviously matters more than the quantity, the number. Next slide, please. Administration, many of you will be involved with administration, so we're looking for success in the outcomes of your programs that you're administrating. What is innovative? How are there quality improvement? Is there scholarship regarding the administration of these programs? And then once again, do you have a local, regional, or national recognition for the administration, for the quality of your programs? And then lastly, service to medical center, university community, the administration of applicable or service on committees, memberships in organizations, societies, grant review panels, community service activities, beyond those done as part of your normally funded faculty roles. So, there's a lot of varied opportunities here to pursue areas that you're interested in, to make contributions and to create a body of work that warrants promotion. Next slide, please. Now, additional criteria here, which are highlighted here, is we do want faculty, and we expect faculty to be involved with mentoring. Okay, so we're all, this is a community, and the most successful communities are where we help each other, where we work together, where we create synergism between our efforts. And mentoring is, as Pat was emphasizing in the beginning of this talk, is one of the most important things we can do for our peers and honestly for ourselves. It's quite, it's incredibly rewarding. And you know, as a teacher, you always learn from your students, right? From your mentees, you're going to learn things from them that are going to help you do your job better. Quality improvement and initiatives is certainly desirable, and leadership roles there are especially notable. Demonstrate engagement in diversity, equity, and inclusion programs or self-development activities. This, as you know, is an important aspect and focus of our university. Okay, and you can see down there. Just go back 1 second. Is a link to the website. Next slide, thank you. All right, so that's the clinical tracks: clinical scholar, clinical educator, and you can. I hope you appreciate the emphasis between those two pathways within the clinical track. I once again will refer you to that table that's on the website, which I think goes into more detail and has more examples and can show you how what are the factors that we weigh. They're all listed there, but it's just another way of presenting the same information, maybe in a way that some of you may find more helpful in understanding what's expected. All right, so let's now move to the teaching track. And we have some of our schools have a large percentage of their faculty on the teaching track, and others a smaller percentage. So these folks are typically educational leaders, and we're looking for evidence of outstanding contributions to teaching, publication of teaching methods and materials, creation of outstanding continuing education and teaching programs. These faculty will often be involved with assembling, maintain, and update an educator's portfolio or dossier. So here we're looking for regional, national recognized scholarship for their education accomplishments, but may also publish on non-educational topics as well. So this is often a point that needs clarification. So let me emphasize, most of our faculty, of course, who may be in a teaching track, they're teaching a specific discipline. Your publications do not only need to be teaching educational related. In fact, it could be the minority of the publications. They could be largely in your clinical discipline. So that is perfectly fine. And most people in the teaching track have a mixture, and there's no specified ratio between education and your clinical discipline. But the important thing is we expect many of these people to be primarily publishing in their clinical discipline. Okay. Now, where was I? Then invited talks is another measure of your reputation, and memberships in program review or accreditation committees is another marker for your recognition outside of Rutgers. If you're a clinician, excellence in patient care and administration, if you're an administrator, as applicable. And here's that word professionalism again. Okay, you know, we expect that of all of us. Next slide, please. So what are the promotion criteria? Well, teaching excellence, and this of course can take many, many forms, including curriculum and course development, training, teaching, advising students, residents, fellows, and colleagues through mentoring. Can be in multiple clinical settings, just like the clinical track that I mentioned before: classroom, online, laboratories, in and outpatient setting, clinical settings, and community. So, you know, any of those settings are perfectly fine. Scholarly activities focused on specific areas of education. An important strategy for you to think about as you build your scholarly work is to create a theme of peer-reviewed work, and that which is nationally accessible and recognized. So that it's published, it's disseminated. That's what we're looking for. Appropriate activities, once again, include case series, education materials, scholarly reviews, book chapters, textbook authorship or editorialship, creation of novel computer programs, and development of innovative teaching materials, something that this group is likely to be involved with. Next, please. You know, many on the teaching track are clinicians, not all. So, but those of you who are, we're looking for excellence in your clinical care, receiving referrals if you have a specialized clinical area. And once again, it's regarded as outstanding, and it's your peers who assess this, right? Outsiders who don't practice with you can't do that. This has to be done inside by your senior faculty, by other clinicians who you work with, and trainees, of course. Administration, and you should, you're hearing the same sort of concepts over and over again in these different tracks. It's success in outcomes of the programs that you administer. So that would be your teaching programs in this example. Innovation, quality improvement, scholarship regarding the administration of these programs, and then, evidence for local, regional, or national recognition. Next slide, please. So what does that look like? Well, that's invitation to speak or being a visiting professor, membership in positions of leadership in professional societies, so getting involved with your societies, editorial board memberships or review assignments. As Pat said, when you're asked to review a paper, for a peer-reviewed journal, then here's your opportunity to contribute to your discipline, to your scholarly community, and that's something that's recognized and something we certainly hope that you'll do. Editorial board memberships, consultative positions with government or private agencies, so an organizer of international, regional, or national meetings, so you get involved with the organization of your discipline's meetings. Service to medical center, university, community. Once again, this is membership in organizations, societies, grant review panels, and community service activities, those beyond as part of your normally funded faculty roles. Next slide. Okay, so the last track is called the professional practice track. And this is folks who, faculty who have superior healthcare skills. They're recognized and involved with teaching. All of us teach. And they have collaborative participation in ongoing clinical and translational research programs, preferably leading to a scholarly output. Next slide, please. So clinical excellence. Well, a lot of this is very repetitive, and you're seeing the same sort of bullets that I showed you in the other tracks of those of our faculty that are involved with clinical care. So, this is outstanding reputations, receive referrals if you have specialized care, and that your peers judge you to be an outstanding clinician, okay? Teaching excellence it's the same sort of information on as the other slides here, that you could be involved with curriculum and course development, teaching students, residents, and fellows, mentoring students or residents in preparation of things like abstracts, case reports, or review articles. Teaching awards is a big deal. I think for all these tracks, it's a really important designation. If you've earned a teaching award, it's something that is greatly valued and clearly establishes you as an outstanding teacher, and almost always also as an outstanding clinician in your field, okay? And invited lectures would be an example where we have demonstrated teaching excellence. Now, the professional practice track folks typically are doing their teaching as part of their clinical care. So it happens at the same time. You're rounding in the hospital, for example. You're with trainees in your outpatient practices, as examples, where a lot of that teaching happens. It can happen in the classroom, but it commonly happens in those settings. Scholarly activities are strongly encouraged and will be considered in promotion decisions. You're expected to provide a supportive role in clinical research. So this comes in many forms, but it could involve helping to enroll patients in clinical trials. If you're a radiologist, as an example, interpretation of images, you're a pathologist looking at clinical samples. Those are examples. There's lots and lots of others. Achievements needs to be documented, although it may not be at the level that results in co-authorship. So in that situation, you'd be asking those who you've helped conduct studies to write you letters, okay? And indicating the contributions that you made with their projects, and this would provide the documentation for this activity. And then service to the medical center, university community. This is administration or service on committees, clinical laboratory programs, community service beyond those done as part of your normally funded faculty roles. Okay, next slide. All right, so that's an overview of all the tracks. Now, there are a lot of resources out here, and we have been building these on a consistent basis. And I think you will find that if you go to the Faculty Affairs website, there's a lot of information that I've been referring to, and here are the links. So when we send you the slide set, you can link on those, although it's pretty easy to find them on the RBHS Faculty Affairs website. So I mentioned to you before is that there is promotion data here. This document below can be accessed by entering your rector's credentials, and then you link on this, and that will give you the numbers of publications for each of those ranks and track. Okay, so you may find that very interesting. Now, Pat mentioned earlier in the tenure track, we're looking for sustained funding, and one of the measures of that, and not the only measure, is an R01 equivalent. So this is a type of NIH grant, for those of you not familiar with terminology here, which is an investigator-initiated grant, and it's held in great. It's viewed in a very positive light, and so what comes up is that many of us do research in fields that aren't necessarily funded by the NIH, or even if they are, there's other funding sources that we view as peer-reviewed, competitive, that we call an R01 equivalent. And you will see at this link that you can find examples of that. So we spent a lot of time trying to put tables together of examples, but please let me emphasize that it's not totally complete. Okay, and if you have questions or ideas about what grant might be an R01 equivalent and you don't see it in that table, ask us. Okay, so Pat and I are happy to comment on that and to give you feedback on that. Okay. In addition, you'll see here that that there's a written document with the guidelines that we've been summarizing today. Next slide, please. All right, transfer between tracks. Next slide, please. Look, people's careers change, their interests change, their opportunities might change as well, and we recognize that careers can evolve, and so that it may be appropriate to transfer tracks, but we think mostly this should be quite uncommon. Okay, and these are changes that are considered in circumstances where there is a change in the direction of the faculty member's career. Your job, you have a different job, is kind of the way to think about it. We look at each of these tracks as different jobs, all exceedingly important. We as an RBHS, this is a team effort, okay, and we have people who do different things. Each of those tracks are highly valued, but they're viewed as different jobs. And so, if your job, using perhaps an oversimplified way of looking at it, if your career has changed, then maybe another track makes sense for you. Okay, and transfer between tracks requires a written request of the faculty member specifying the track into which they want to transfer. And this needs to be approved by the chair, A&P committee, dean, provost, and then finally the chancellor. Upon approval of a transfer between tracks, a letter outlining the terms of appointment on the new track will be provided. So it's a new job, and you will get a letter outlining what the expectations were. And faculty with questions about changing tracks should certainly discuss it with their chair, or Pat and I are happy to talk to you anytime about this. Next slide, please. All right, the formal part of we'd be happy to in any questions any of you may have. Are we going to do this through the chat? How are we going to do this? Or do we want to let people